Welcome to day 24 of Advent of Cyber, and also Merry Christmas Eve. My name is Ariane, or Vicious Child, whichever you prefer, and I appreciate TryHackMe for allowing me the opportunity to do today's walkthrough. Today we're going to be doing web hacking using cURL. But before we get into the task, let's go over our prizes and what TryHackMe really is all about. Every year, TryHackMe does what's called Advent of Cyber, where for 24 days up until Christmas, from December 1st to December 4th, they have beginner-friendly challenges that you could take on every single day to actually learn new skills and gain new skills. And it's also beginner-friendly. So I've been actually doing TryHackMe probably for the last 3 or 4 years now. But the best part about it is you not only gain skills, you have the opportunity to win over $150,000 in prizes. So you could win an iPhone 17, MacBook Pro, a monitor, some AirPods, and some hacker tools like Flipper Zero or like Raspberry Pi. You can even have some career boost opportunities as well, some DEF CON tickets, Burp Suite certifications, the TryHackMe Sal 1 and PT1 certification as well. So some really good opportunities that you can also win just by doing these challenges every single day. So I strongly encourage that you participate. If you missed a room, go back and do a room to get those tickets so you have the opportunity and a better chance to win one of these prizes. All right, let's get into our task for today. So, the evil Easter Bunny operate a web control panel that holds the wormhole open. Using cURL, we'll identify the endpoints, send the required requests, and shut down the wormhole once and for all. So according to Blue Team Intel, the wormhole is held by a control panel on the Evil Bunny's web server. So the team must shut it down first to cut off reinforcements before facing King Malheur. However, the terminal they have is bare. No Burp Suite, no browser, just a command prompt. But that is fine. The team will use command line and cURL to speak HTTP directly, send requests, read responses, and find endpoints that shut the portal down. So we have a few learning objectives. We'll understand what HTTP requests and responses are at a high level, use cURL to make basic requests using GET, and view raw responses in the terminal, send post requests with cURL to submit data to endpoints, and work with cookies and sessions in cURL to maintain a state across requests. So let's go ahead and start our attack box and start our machine. This can take about 5 to 10 minutes depending on the machine and how many people are in this actual room at a time. So just be patient. It will load up eventually, and once mine's load up, I will be back with y'all. All right, so we have our attacker machine that is connected and our target machine. So we could go ahead and click check. All right, so now we'll get into the actual contents and context of the task. So we're going to do HTTP requests using cURL. So applications like browsers communicate with servers using HTTP. So think of HTTP as a language for asking a server for resources. So this is going to be your pages, images, JSON data, and getting answers back. So if you want to access a website, your browser sends an HTTP request to the web server. If the request is valid, the server replies with an HTTP response that contains the data needed to display the website. So in the absence of a browser, you can speak to HTTP directly from the command prompt. So the simplest way to do that is using a tool called cURL. cURL is a command line tool for crafting HTTP requests and viewing raw responses. So it's ideal when you need precision or when a graphic user interface tools aren't available to you. So we're going to try out cURL in our attack box and see what happens. So we're going to do cURL. And just a FYI, your IP address here should look a little bit different from mine because it is according to your attack box or your target box. And we'll hit enter. So now we can see welcome to the cURL practice server. And now it's telling us to try sending a post request using the post.php. So Now we're going to try sending a post request. So suppose you found a login form whose post target is post.php. So when you log in through a browser, it sends a post request to the server containing the credentials you entered. So we can stimulate this directly from the terminal. So a normal login form submission may look like something like this. So you'll call cURL. You'll use the -x post to tell cURL to use the post method. Then you're going to do -d to define the data that we're sending in the body request. And in this form, this will be our username and password. And then we want to call the actual URL that we're wanting to send this data to. So this would be something like what a normal submission was like. So if we want to go ahead and try that, we could. But as we can see, once we submit this, it'll be invalid credentials. So we'll just test it out just to see what we get. And our IP address. And it should be .-post, yep. All right, so we can see, as stated, we should get invalid credentials. But this is typically the process that you do when you're actually sending a post request. But depending on your credentials, it may be invalid or it may be correct. So we'll just keep along with the test and see what we're getting. So if the application expects additional information like a login button or a CSRF token, this can also be included in that as well. So after the password, we'll add a submit equal login as well. So if we want to also see what our server is returning, we can add the -i flag in front of the post request. So it'll give a little bit of information on what we're seeing and what the actual header is of that as well. So if you want to see what that looks like, we could run the same thing and just add -i. And if you're not familiar with the terminal, we can just click the arrow up to get the latest syntax that you ran before. So you just do up arrow and then enter whatever else you want to enter or change whatever you want to enter. And then hit enter. And now we can see our header here. So we can see that HTTP with our code, which is 200, which means we're hitting the target. We can't access it at this point. So in some cases, if the site responds with set cookie header, that's a good sign. It means you successfully logged in or at least triggered a session. So let's go down to our questions and see maybe if we have our first question associated with sending a post request. So our first question is, make a post request to post.php endpoint with the username admin and password admin. So hence that's why we got invalid credentials, because that's not our password. So we can do up arrow again, and we want our username to be admin and our password to be admin. And we'll make sure that we have the right endpoint, points.php. Hit enter, and we have a flag. So we have captured our first flag, and we also have successfully made our first post request. So we can go ahead and copy this and put there. And that is correct. So looking at our next question, we can kind of see we're going into cookies. So let's go up to our next section. And we're going to be using cookies and sessions. So once you log in, web applications use cookies to keep your session active. So when you make another request with your browser, the cookie gets sent automatically. But with a cURL, you need to handle it yourself. So we can do this in 2 steps. First, we'll save the cookie. So we'll use this particular syntax. It'll do cURL-C, which is saying, hey, I want to capture this, and we're going to capture this in a file called cookies.txt. And then the same thing from our previous section. -D is basically saying this is what we're going to be sending to our web page. So it's going to be username and password with our credentials admin and admin. And that is followed up with our URL as well as our request. So oftentimes, once we see this, we should see a session cookie that looks something like this, either in our header or if we were to open up the cookies.txt file. Once we do that, we can then reuse the saved cookies using the following syntax. So we'll say curl again, use -b to basically give the option to send those saved cookies that we just got in our previous section in the next request, just like the browser would, and it should allow us to log in as if we were in our previous section. So we did have a question on cookies. So we want to make a request to cookie.php endpoint with the username admin and the password admin, and then save the cookie, reuse that saved cookie at the endpoint, and what is the flag that we receive. So we can go back up to our cookie section. I'm going to go ahead and clear this, and we do curl C, and we're going to create that text file that cookie will be saved in. And we want to do -d. And remember, our username is going to be admin, and our password will also be admin. And then we're going to call our URL. Now remember, we're going to be making a request to cookie.php. So in this example, we have session.php, but in our question, we want to request to the cookie.php. So just a FYI and a heads up on that. And hit enter. And we can see the login was successful and the cookie was set. So if we do ls, we should see a cookies file. We can cat cookies. And we can see we have our cookie saved here. All right. So now we want to actually use this saved cookie and try to log back in. So we'll do curl -b, call that saved cookies text file. So we do cookies.txt and just call our URL again. So we're going to do 10.67.173.159. And remember, cookie.php. Jesus, I can't type today. All right, so now we can see we have successfully logged back in as the admin, and we also have a flag for our question number 2. So we can go ahead and copy this. And we could go ahead and paste that. And we can see that is the correct flag. So going to number 3, we can see after the brute force on this particular endpoint, what is the password of the admin user? So in our next session, we're going to be learning about how to automate logins and performing U-Force using cURL. So now that we can send a post request and manage cookie sessions, it's time to automate things a little bit. So we're going to stimulate a brute force attack against a weak login form. So we'll start by creating a file called passwords.txt, and we're going to place the following passwords inside of it. So we're going to clear this. And in order to create a text file or a new file, we're going to do nano, and we're going to call this passwords.txt. And then we're going to just copy those passwords, drop it in here, click Control X and hit Y and hit enter. So if we do ls, we should see that password text created. And if you just want to go the extra mile to make sure that those passwords are there, we can do cat passwords and we can see that they are successfully there. All right. So now we're going to create a simple bash loop called loop.sh. And this is basically going to try each password in our password.txt file against this particular page, bruteforce.php. So what we can do, we're going to nano again, name this loop.sh. And we want to copy and paste the following code inside of it. So we can do this. And what this basically says is for pass, this is going to be what we're calling in. We're going to cat all the passwords in passwords.txt. And then it's going to echo try and password. So what echo means is it'll say try and password 1, try and password 2. So like for example, you'll see on your screen try and admin 123, then try and password, then try and let me in, and so on and so forth. And then it's going to actually respond with the cURL. So you're going to push this to this actual web page with the username, and it's going to try every single password in this actual cat file to our URL. And then we should, if successful, we'll get a response saying welcome, and then the password found with the password that it is. So just a brief understanding of what's going on the back end of this. We'll hit enter. And because this is a bash file, we then need to be able to execute permissions to the script and run it. So we will run this actual command. So we'll do chmod, then plus x, and then verify our actual bash file, hit enter, and then we should be able to run it. All right, and as I stated before, we can see it shows try and password, every single password, and then it shows password found, and this will be the password that we found from the brute force. So if we go back to our question, it says, after doing the brute force on the endpoint, what is the password of the admin user? So secret admin should be our password. So let's go ahead, copy that, and see if that is correct. That is correct. So we have made a post request, signed in successfully. We saved cookies, captured cookies, and then reused those cookies. And then we took it a step further and automated login and performing brute force using cURL. So now we're going to try bypassing user agent checks. So some applications block cURL by checking the user agent header. So for example, the server may reject requests with user curl-7.x.x. So to specify a custom user agent, we need to use a flag called -a. This is basically going to state this is my user agent, and in this example, we can see the user agent is internal computer, and then we want to call this actual request ending in UA, which is just user agent, and we're going to check that. So this is going to be UA_check.php. So we can test that out and see what we get. So we'll do curl-h, and we're going to call that URL. And hit enter, and we can see welcome internal computer. So in order to confirm that this actual URL is checking for user agent headers, we can run it without the actual user agent in the actual syntax. So we can run it with just -i and see what happens. And we can see we have our header, but it also tells us it's blocked because only internal computer user agents are allowed, which tells us that this actual website or URL checks for user agents in the header. So we can run our previous one, and we can do -i again. And we can see we have our header because we used the -i, and we also were able to log in successfully because we showed our user agent. So like it says, if the first one fails and the second one succeeds, the UA check is working and you bypass by spoofing. So let's see if we have a question for this one. So we want to make a request to agent.php, endpoint with the user agent tbfc, and what is the flag that we receive. So we're going to use basically the same syntax we used before, except we're going to change our endpoint and our user agent. So our user agent will be TBFC, and we want to make a request to agent.php endpoint. So we'll change this UA check to agent.php, hit enter, and we have successfully logged in and we have captured our flag. So we can go ahead and copy this and put this here, and that is correct. So it looks like we have a bonus mission. This is completely optional, so feel free if you don't want to just answer the other questions and move past it. Or if you want to take on the extra challenge and do the bonus mission, I strongly recommend it and I strongly encourage it, because some of these challenges have been really hard and really challenging. So if you're up for the challenge and you want to go ahead and do the bonus question and go a step further based on what we learned in today's room, I highly, highly recommend it. If you don't, feel free to just hit check and answer all the other questions to complete the room. That is all I have for today's Advent of Cyber, day 24. I hope you learned something about web packing using cURL, and I hope I did a great job of explaining it and walking you through it. And until next year of Advent of Cyber, Merry Christmas to you all, happy holidays to you and your family, and thank you again, TryHackMe, for the opportunity. Happy holidays and have a happy new year.